Hello. This is Jennifer from Jen the Bookworm. I am bringing you kind of a mixed video today. Briefly, I want to touch on my mid-month freakout. But also today I'm bringing you my very first review video. I will be reviewing Brandon Sanderson series. I promise this is not the Brandon Sanderson channel, but right now this is who I'm reading and this is who I'm really into. So my mid-month freakout, this is something that booktubers do to kind of say, we did a TBR, this is what we're reading in the month, and then this video is about how we are meeting that goal. A freakout is basically how well are we meeting that goal. Right now, I'm freaking out because I promised 5 books, and promise I use facetiously. I mean, if I don't get to something, it goes on to the next month. But my goal really was to get to 5 books, and one of them was a Brandon Sanderson 48-hour monster book. So, I am still just reading that. I am 69% the way through the book. I had to switch from audio to Kindle for some of it because I went to the beach yesterday with my daughter, so we will see. So the book I'm reading is Words of Radiance. It's the second book in the Stormlight Archive series, and so we will see how far I can get to with my TBR by the end of this month. So the series that I'm reviewing today, moving on to what the meat of this video is actually about, I'm reviewing the Reckoner series by Brandon Sanderson. The Reckoner series, it's where I started. Almost nobody seems to start with this. Everyone seems to start with Mistborn, and a smaller group of people start with Stormlight Archive. But Mistborn, I had heard the first book in the Mistborn series was not his finest work, so I kind of shied away from that and went to Stormlight. The Reckoner series, though, I did that first because people were like, "Ooh, Brandon Sanderson, you'll love him. He's great." Audibles was doing a $5 deal. They do frequently, where you can get books for $5. And there was a Brandon Sanderson book called Steelheart, which is the first book in the Reckoner series, that was on a $5 deal. And I said, sure, I'll buy it because I know I'm going to eventually read him. I decided I wanted to read something different than what I've been reading. That's what this whole journey of books for this year has been for me, is to stop rereading so much and to start really reading new stuff. So I started with this. Now I'm going to review the series, and I'm going to try and do it in a I'm going to try and do it in a non-spoiler way. There may be very small spoilers, such as when you're reviewing a series, if there's a question about whether or not a character is going to live in the first book, and then I mention him in the second book, then I've sort of spoiled whether or not that's going to happen. But other than little things like that I can't help, I'm not going to spoil the plots and stuff for you. And I'm just going to give you my honest review of it and hope that you will pick it up too, because I definitely give this series a very high rating. But I have more to say about the first book, because the first book is setting up all the world building stuff and setting up characters. The other books sort of carry them on. Steelheart takes place in our world. So the premise of this world, this series, is that a reddish, orangish star suddenly appears in our sky. It doesn't seem to do anything. It's just there for about a year. And then suddenly, some people start to receive superpowers. But to a man, it seems every person who receives superpowers are supervillains. No heroes, really. It's the idea that power corrupts, and that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's the basis of this whole world. There are superpowered people, there are bad guys, and they don't even identify as human anymore. They think that humans are cattle or playthings for them to use as they wish. They are above humans. They have evolved. They are the next step in evolution. So the epics, once they reach their power, they kind of divide up the world. This epic is going to take this area, and this territory belongs to this person, and so on and so forth, and it kind of causes an apocalypse of sorts. I mean, it's not the world has come to an end, but it drastically changes practically overnight. So we follow at first the main character. His name is David, and David is just a regular guy who was with his father in the beginning of the book. He's with his father at a savings and loan bank, trying to get a loan to get a house, because it mentions they're practically homeless. I think they're sleeping on couches and stuff. And his dad is trying to get a place, and his mom has been lost already. Not to epics or anything. She died. She was sick. And an epic comes into the bank and just starts killing people. And a high epic, one of the biggest, more powerful epics, called Steelheart, which the book is named after, he comes in and he says, "What are you doing? This is my empire. This is mine. This is my world. You can't do anything unless you swear allegiance to me." And there a fight ensues, and Steelheart wins. In the fight, though, something happens that no one has ever seen before, and that's Steelheart gets injured. Now, Steelheart is an epic that can't be cut, can't be shot, can't be blown up, can't be anything. He is indestructible. He is also as strong as 10 men, and he can fly. He can manipulate elements and stuff to make himself fly, and so he is like Superman if Superman was evil. And he can't be hurt, except for that he was. And Steelheart threw a fit and thought that he took out everyone who saw that he got injured. He was so afraid that someone would see what injured him that he took it out. So the epics, they have a weakness. They usually have one, maybe two weaknesses, and that's the way you can take them down. But obviously they're very secretive about their weaknesses. They don't want anyone to know what they are, what could kill them. So he took down the whole bank, and that's where, and then David was a little kid, and 10 years later, David is now an adult who went through what passed for the orphanage system in this world, and he is obsessed with epics. He has journals and journals and journals of information. He'd give his last few dollars to get a picture of an epic or a story about an epic, and he records all this in his journals, and he just has over a dozen journals full of information about any epic he can get his hands on. In learning about the epics, though, he also learns about a group called the Reckoners, and the Reckoners are made up of humans and they have different cells around, at least the U.S. They might have also an international, but they don't really talk about that very much. But there are different cells of the Reckoners, and the Reckoners' job is to go through, and they're trying to get rid of the epics as much as they can. I don't think that they really believe that they can get rid of someone as big as Steelheart, but all the smaller, less high epics, the regular epics, they pick them off here and there, because a lot of the high epics will lean on some of the smaller epics for some of their more unique powers, and if we can take their legs out from under them, then they're less able to hurt people. So that's kind of, the Reckoners just do what they can. This book follows a certain group led by a man named Prof. He's kind of the like father figure of the group. There's a woman named Tia who she's kind of the brains of the operation, if you will. She is a scholar. She collects information kind of like David does about epics, and there's a group of them, and they share information with each other so that they can help all the Reckoners groups. Abraham, who I love Abraham, he was a great character. He's sort of a gentle giant character, and I've noticed that in a couple of Brandon Sanderson's books that I've read now. I've started on 2 series, this one and Stormlight. He always seems to have kind of that big, lovable, gentle giant character. Now, this gentle giant does come with a ginormous machine gun, which he will take you out with, but he is soft-spoken and big-hearted, and I loved Abraham. Then there was Cody, and I loved Cody also, but mostly because he was kind of a smart ass, and he was always making up stories, and you just never knew. You knew that he wasn't, that he was making up stories, but you never quite know whether or not he believes his own BS, or if he's just, if he's messing with you, or if he honestly maybe has a little psychosis going on there, because he will make up stories about himself that are just funny, or about the world that's just funny. And then there's Megan, who is rather new to the Reckoners, or this Reckoners group, and is sort of the love interest or crush that David has, and part of the reason why he always wanted to join the Reckoners, but it solidified the deal when he saw Megan, and she's kind of a tough girl with, you know, some revolvers, and she doesn't take shit from anyone, and she's that kind of character. And so that group sort of struggle with whether or not to take David in or not. The object of this story is to take out Steelheart. David wants to avenge his father, wants to take out Steelheart, wants him dead. And this group had already taken out an epic and was on its way out, because that's their pattern. Their pattern is to hit and run. And he tries to convince them to stay and to take on Steelheart, which is much bigger prey than they've ever taken on before. So that's what this book is about. And it's an excellent book, has an excellent ending to it. If you only read this one book, you know that there's more stories out there, but you would be satisfied. Like, he doesn't leave it off at a cliffhanger to the point to where you're not sure what's going on. You have to pick up the next book to figure it out. Brandon Sanderson doesn't seem to do that, and I appreciate that about him. He seems to wrap up his stories within the book that the story's in. He leaves some things open, like you can read further, but if you don't read further, you don't feel like you're missing out necessarily. Or you don't feel, well, you're missing out if you don't keep reading, you're missing out, but you don't feel like the answer to the question in this book is actually in the next book. So I appreciate that about him. The second book is called Firefight, and it takes place not in, so the first book takes place in what is now Chicago, and they call it New Chicago. The second book takes place in what was Manhattan. And you get to see more epics. The first book, they talked about other epics, but there was only like 2 or 3 that you really got to really see. In this one, you get to see a couple of different new epics and kind of what their powers are. And I think they're very creative. I think he comes up with some very creative superpowers. Not just the, I'm a brick, I'm the strength superpower, I'm the mentalist superpower, I'm the flying superpower, I'm the speed superpower. He comes up with some really interesting superpowers. Like in the second book, there is a epic that creates these vines all over the world, or all over the city, the Manhattan, which has been flooded, so everyone's living on rooftops. So, but all around there are these vines and fruit. It just grows off the vine. Fruit, unlike what we normally see. And so there's no starvation in this world because anyone can pick off a piece of fruit from anywhere and eat it. That's this person's superpower, is to grow food off of vines. I mean, it's interesting. So I really appreciate his creativity in coming up with different superpower themes that we don't always see. The third book, and I don't want to tell too much about the plot of the second book because it does contain spoilers. Like I said, it gets a little harder to tell you much about the book because I don't want to give away what characters stay, what characters leave, what characters develop, and what they develop into. So I'm just touching on the next couple books. The third book is called Calamity, which is what they call the star. The star that appeared in the sky is called Calamity, and so the third book is kind of about Calamity. In this book, David decides the fate of the world depends upon him getting rid of the source of the supervillain powers, which is Calamity. So he's hoping by taking care of the source that everyone will, I don't know if he thinks that they're going to go back to normal, but at least new ones won't be made, right? So that's what this book is kind of about. He's still with the same group, a little bit tweaked, new characters in, some characters out, that kind of thing. The team has somewhat broken apart, so he's trying to reunite the team. He's trying to stop the epics from destroying everything. It's kind of more of the same, except for he's really trying to go after the source, hoping that will fix things for this world, or at least start healing what's been broken in this world. So it's a very good conclusion to that story. And I say conclusion, there are 4 actual books in the series, and I've just gone over 3. But the 4th book is a different Reckoners team altogether. So these 3 books, Steelheart, Firefight, Calamity, they follow David and the team that David is associated with. And if you don't read any more past that, then it can be contained. Those 3 books can contain the whole story. It contains the whole story of David anyway. But there's also a short story that I believe was just released on Audibles, and I don't know if they even have an ebook version of it or not. But it is called Mitosis. It is like 2 hours. I think it was a 2-hour listen. And it's just, Mitosis is another epic. It's just it goes in between Steelheart and Firefight. Mitosis is a villain that was sent to New Chicago to mess with the Reckoners there. It's a short story. It doesn't really add anything other than flavor to the world. It doesn't further the story, really. It doesn't, if you completely skipped it, you're not going to really be missing anything. I still would have given it like a 3-star. I mean, it was still enjoyable to read or listen to. It was very good in that aspect, but it wasn't necessarily necessary. So the last book, Lux. Lux is, it's tagged as a Texas Reckoners book. So this is a completely different Reckoners group, completely different main character, Jax, who experiences much the same as David. He loses his family all kind of in one fell swoop. And he is taken in by Prof from the first series, sort of ties in. He's taken in by Prof, taken to a Reckoners camp basically at like 10 years old or something like that. And he is given to somebody to train, and then Prof leaves, and we don't really see Prof again after. I think we see Prof one more time. You follow Jax and you follow his journey through the Reckoners, and his main goal, of course, is to avenge his brother, who he was with when his brother died. Avenge his brother, but also to fix the world. I mean, he wants to fix the world. He wants to make it to where other people don't have the same experiences that he had. He never wants anyone to watch their family die without having any power to do anything about it. So that's kind of his goal. Something that was mentioned in the previous books as well, but it's more highlighted in this book, is that there are devices that you can use that simulate epic power. Tools are available in the other books. In this one, it's far more prevalent because Jax is far more, he's a tinkerer, and he makes things. He makes these devices. He's a good character. The other characters in the other characters in the Reckoners are all good characters. They're not like duplicated. It's not a duplicated group. And although Jax is an orphan and David was an orphan, they're not duplicated characters either. They have their own things. They have their own strengths and weaknesses. I appreciate that he didn't just like rebrand what he had already done. So I thought it was a very good series. And this group of Reckoners in particular is after a floating city that kind of floats around the U.S. and stops at a place and destroys it and collects the people there. They send people down to collect them for reasons they don't know. Nefarious reasons they're guessing because they're villains. So slaves or sacrifices or something to make their way up to Lux, which is the city that's floating around, and figure out what's going on and take out the epics if they can. So that's what this story is about. Now, at the end of Lux, Brandon Sanderson does allude to a power that would be a very interesting continuation of the story. But it is a little bit of a cliffhanger, and I said earlier he doesn't really do cliffhangers that aren't answered within the same story. And this is a little break from that because he did do this, but it's a cliffhanger almost like in Jurassic Park, the shaving cream can full of dinosaur embryo or whatnot. It's lost, and we don't really ever see it again until the more later movies, the Jurassic World movies. We eventually see it come about again, but they go through all of Jurassic Park 1, 2, and 3, and you never see that can again. So it's a cliffhanger. It's a something that's left out there. It's food for fan fiction writers and people who like to theorize about movies or books or whatnot. But it's not necessarily something that will ruin the whole series if he doesn't write another book and explain it. But he left himself a little place to go if he ever decides to come back to the series, which I haven't heard whether or not he will, but he might. Don't let that discourage you, though. It is a complete series the way it is. It's very good the way it is. If he never writes another book in the Reckoner series, I think he did an awesome job of bringing this world about, of making it feel real. It's a little more science fiction-y than his other stuff is. I think the devices that they use to simulate epic powers makes it a little more science fiction. I think that obviously there are some fantastical elements to it, the superpowers and stuff like that. If you are not a huge science fiction fan, I'm not a huge science fiction fan. It's not so much that it goes over your head and makes you feel confused, and it's very easy, it's very light, it's very pleasant. So I definitely recommend this whole series. It was very good. I think I'd give them all a 4-star, except for the Mitosis. I think I'd give a 3-star too, just because it's so small and it just adds extra flavor to the series. It doesn't actually further the series along or add a lot of extra story, or it's just extra world building, which Brandon Sanderson seems to love to do, extra world building stuff. I see a lot of people talking about Brandon Sanderson on BookTube. The BookTube is full of it. He is well liked. He is on lists about best fantasy series I've ever read, and he's on a list for, if you really want to get into fantasy and you need something that's really friendly towards beginners, his books are really good for that. Books with strong endings, his books are really good for that. Books with huge world building, his books are really good for that. But I never see anyone talk about the Reckoners. I tried looking at least some of the booktubers that I watch to see, has anyone mentioned this series? And I haven't seen a lot of reviews on this series. So while BookTube is full of Brandon Sanderson, I'm hoping that this brings something a little new to you. So that was my review of the Reckoner series, and my first review that I've ever done. I hope that you liked it. I hope that you enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking about this series. I enjoyed reading this series. I enjoy recommending this series to people. So if you've never read The Reckoners, I definitely recommend it. And if you have, please leave me a comment. Tell me what you thought about it. Tell me what you thought the strongest selling point of this series is, and if you have any opinions on it at all. I'd love to hear those opinions. If you know of any other not well-known series by a well-known author that you'd like to recommend to me, please feel free to do that. Before I wrap up here, I have one more little bit of news, channel news, if you will. I have purchased things to go on this wall. I am hoping to be able to get things up on the wall before my next video. I've been putting out videos every Friday. I'm hoping to bring you something that's not a blank wall, not me behind or in front of a bland wall. I have some posters and some things that I'm hoping will dress things up a little bit, dress up my set a little bit. So stay tuned for that, and I hope that that you give me a like, give me a subscribe, share this video with someone you think might be interested in reading a book on supervillains and how the world has to come back from being attacked by supervillains. If you know anybody who might like this kind of series, share this video. It would really help out my channel a lot. The more likes, the more comments, the more shares, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I'm going to be bringing you videos at least once a week, so thank you very much for taking your time to listen to me ramble on about these books. I really, really, really enjoyed these books, and I enjoy bringing this content to you. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.